Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed podcast for episode 93. Steve is back with us to talk about the latest news and rumors to round up 2025. So we're going to be talking a little bit about Nvidia potentially cutting GPU supply for the first half of 2026. We'll be talking about the 9850X3D again, some Intel CPU stuff, what we're expecting from them throughout the next year, a few other additional GPU things, and then some interesting stories from Steve about how he managed to maybe destroy some hardware. So stay tuned for that towards the end of the podcast. Let's get into it. It's a hot day here in Australia, Steve. So I'm glad that we are recording this podcast in the morning before it gets crazy, because usually when we record stuff, I turn off the aircon in my studio. I know it's probably pretty similar for you, just to avoid the noise sort of thing. But I think the forecast is like 38 degrees Celsius here today. So get it in before it starts getting real bad.
Well, Tim, I can check my personal weather station.
Oh, that's right. So can I.
And it's currently 30 degrees here already at 11 a.m.
Yeah, at my place, it is already 36 degrees.
Oh, yeah, it's 30.3 here. Do you know when we spoke 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Somebody in the comment section had the audacity to give us crap for talking about weather stations like that was lame or something.
Oh, but I thought we are very upfront that the section in that we talk about weather stations is called How Boring Our Lives Are.
Well, normally it is, but that was like peak excitement. So anyway, I don't know what that person was on about. I banned them, so I don't remember their name.
Okay, good. We can't have any weather station slander in our comment section.
No, I swiftly deleted them. So anyway, but yeah, the other thing that sucks about today, apart from being excessively hot, is that the pollen count is currently... Well, it's only high, but I feel like it's extreme based on my nose because, again, full disclaimer, guys, a little bit sniffly, sort of red eyes a little bit. Not too bad, not full-blown hay fever, but I'm getting some of the symptoms. So I'll do my best to mute myself when I have to sniff, but I'm not dying. If anyone looks at me and like, Steve, you got to sleep, you're not looking after yourself, it's just hay fever. I should survive this.
I love those comments where it says like you need to get more sleep, and sometimes when I film those videos of people say that about I've had like a really excellent sleep and I'm feeling great, and people are like, "Wow, you look so tired," and it's like, what?
Yeah, it's like the default setting is I look like shit. So that's my optimal configuration.
Let's get into some news topics for this week's episode. Well, news is sort of one way of putting it. Rumors is probably another way of putting it, and we'll start, I guess, with the 9850X3D, which we talked about in the podcast, I guess, a couple of weeks ago.
It would have been the last time I was on, which was 2 weeks ago. She had Ed on last week, which was really cool.
I think we were talking about it because AMD had published some sort of driver thing on their website, which they then took down. And the rumors are currently suggesting with this part that it'll be released at some point next year, pretty early in the year. I think we're expecting a CES announcement for this processor. And really, all we're expecting is it to be an overclocked or higher clocked model of the 9800X3D, increasing the clock speeds from, I think, 5.2 to 5.6 gigahertz. That's what the rumors are suggesting, which would make it, I guess we talked about it previously, a KS model. But you've seen some rumors that are suggesting that potentially that's not the case.
Well, yeah, I made the joke that it's AMD's KS model, so kind of a waste of time. It's sort of cashing in on the success of the 9800. They've got some slightly better binned models, so they're essentially doing what Intel does with the KS parts. So I was expecting something like, at minimum, a 20% hike in price for maybe 5% performance on average, sort of uplift there. And then I think it might have been Tom from Moore's Law is Dead. The timing was kind of funny because almost immediately after our video went live with me saying that, I think Tom came out and said it's going to be a new stepping. You can expect better boost behavior, and therefore the performance gain is going to be outside of the sort of expected 5%. It should be substantially better than that because of this new stepping and all of that sort of stuff. So I think that's his latest rumor. I've got nothing to counteract that apart from the fact that I'm absolutely not expecting that to be the case. I stand by my, I guess, 5%. I'm not even sure if that's too high. But I'm staying with about 5%. And I think at minimum it'll be a 20% price hike. That would be my guesses for the 9850X3D. So I don't know what you think about that.
No, I fully agree. Yeah, I don't see this being some sort of amazing part that people are going to be rushing out to purchase. I think it's very much a case of it just being a model designed to get the people that want the absolute best of the best and are willing to pay for it. We've seen these stupid parts for many times in many times previously. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm expecting there. And yeah, things like, new steppings and things like that. When was the last time we saw a stepping change make a huge difference to performance? It just doesn't really happen.
Yeah, I won't crap on that rumor too much because we could look a bit silly if that turns out to be true, but I'd be shocked. I'm expecting that not to be the case. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, the timing was quite funny because just as I said that on the podcast, I think it was, Tom put out a video. So we had a few people coming back and going, oh, I think you're going to be wrong about this. And maybe, but I still don't think so, having heard all that updated information. So that CPU will be probably pretty uninteresting, underwhelming, just like I said, like a KS type thing. So we'll see what AMD does there, but I'm really not expecting that to excite too many people or be of interest to very many. So there's that. I finally got around, so I'm going to pivot. I'm taking over the show here, Tim. I'm throwing a topic out. Yeah,
good.
Sit back, put your feet up. I've got at least 2 minutes of content here, so relax for 2 minutes. But after almost a year, I finally purchased and tested a Core Ultra 5 225. Across the entire year, I might have read one or two comments expressing their disappointment that we hadn't explored Intel's more affordable offerings. And while that is true, it wasn't like we had no idea what a Core Ultra 5 225 was, or, that we hadn't seen someone else test it. So first of all, we did review the Core Ultra 5 245K on day one and found it to be extremely underwhelming. So an even more cut down model at what appeared to be a relatively high price wasn't getting us too excited, which is why we skipped it. But other tech media outlets did purchase or acquire samples of the 225 and the 235 and tested those out and confirmed what we kind of already knew without testing them, is that they're extremely underwhelming. But they have dropped considerably in price since those reviews went live. So I thought, a 225 at $160 US, pretty close to like a 12400. It's cheaper than a 9600X. Does this part with 6P cores, 4E cores, so 10 cores, 10 threads, makes sense at that price. So I bought it, tested it out. Answer is no, not really. It's probably one of the least viable CPUs, I would say, for that entire lineup, because you're not going to buy that plus an LGA 1851 motherboard and DDR5 memory. It doesn't really make sense. You would go for I think the only CPU I could make an argument for, and I think it's somewhat of a valid argument, would be for the 265K. I think that's really the only CPU that they have produced on the entire platform that makes sense and probably will make sense.
Yeah, especially for gaming. I mean, I could see this. The reason they probably made this part is for your sort of pre-built low-cost systems,
where it makes even less sense, in my opinion. I think the 265K makes more sense for productivity, but it's also a solid gaming CPU. So I think that's the CPU that makes all-round sense, if that's a term we can use. But the 225, go make an argument for it, Tim.
Well, I was just saying for OEM builders that buy predominantly Intel CPUs, they want something super cheap. And so that's why they made it. I'm not suggesting they've made it for any sort of performance or value perspective. I'm just saying that sometimes OEMs want low-cost Intel CPUs and they've made it. And then they just have released it as well for the consumer market for people building DIY systems. Like, obviously it doesn't make sense for people to buy from like an upgrading perspective or really from a performance perspective, as you showed. But for the only sort of customer I can think of that would purchase a motherboard and put this CPU on it would be someone building like an office PC branded as like Dell, HP, one of those sort of things. That's the only thing I could think of off the top of my head, really.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And it's like the conversations we've already had with the Core Ultra series. How cheap does this CPU have to be before you'd even entertain purchasing it for just a sort of casual PC? Or I mean, it's a decent gaming CPU. So for a gaming PC, like what price would it have to be? And I think the answer is probably less than $100 US. I would say that CPU would have to be to justify buying the motherboard and the memory and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, you looked at the Ryzen 5 5500 recently as sort of that budget option for people who are just trying to get into the PC market with current prices. Obviously, this has more of a problem because you have to use DDR5 memory with it, as opposed to DDR4 like the 5500. But that is sort of, again, it's pretty hard to justify, like from all angles, it's a pretty hard to justify CPU. But obviously there is a price point, a low price point where it would potentially make sense for some people. So
yeah, at $160, it doesn't make sense for upgraders or new system builders, because once you, as I said, you get the motherboard, the memory for an upgrade, and then you compare that to a 9600X or a Ryzen 7 7700, it's like the same price. So that just doesn't make sense. And then if you're doing a full system build, the argument gets even weaker. So if the CPU was $100 and you're doing a platform upgrade, there's a little bit of a savings there compared to, say, a 9600X. You're getting the CPU essentially for half price. So, but once you factor in the motherboard and all that, it'll work out to be about $100 US saving. Probably not going to be worth it, especially given that you forgo a real upgrade path and all of that. And then for a full system build, again, if you're spending $900, $1,000 US on a full system build, how much difference does $100 US make? It's could be 10%, but again, you're forgoing an upgrade path, and then how much money does that end up costing you down the track? So the savings evaporate instantly there, and if anything, it probably ends up costing you more. So even at $50 US, a 225 is a little bit of a tough sell. I mean, if memory was dirt cheap, then that would become a pretty hot processor. But in the current market, not so much.
Yeah, and this brings up the question, of course, of where does Intel go from here?
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
It's a weird one because I think next year we're expecting 2 CPU releases on the desktop from Intel, the refreshed version of these processors, which is just going to be a complete nothing situation. They'll probably just push them out, and to really no fanfare. At this stage, I don't think we're expecting, or at least I'm not expecting Intel to have any significant embargoed desktop news for CES. That's my current understanding. So I believe they're just going to, whatever their announcements are, they're just going to be there. It's because, again, not super exciting when it comes to that sort of refresh. But then later in the year, we're expecting another generation codenamed Nova Lake, which is supposed to be the next generation platform from Intel. And that should be a big upgrade, big changes, new desktop socket, new CPU core architectures, changes to the way they've designed the CPUs, and theoretically, at least according to rumors, better platform longevity, something that we've been talking about for a while.
I don't see how they do the refresh and the new architecture in the same year. I mean, they've done that sort of thing before, probably not to this extreme degree, but if you recall back when KB Lake S came out, do you remember the 7700K? So that was a refreshed Skylake 7600K. So they refreshed that CPU, and it was, I think they were selling for $360 US. And then that same year, they ended up releasing these, what was it? What came after that? Was it Coffee? Yeah, it was the Coffee Lake CPUs, right?
Yeah, the 8700K, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Basically the same price. It was actually the same price. And that gave you an additional 2 cores, but it was on a new platform because 8th and 9th shared the same platform, if I recall correctly. It's a bit of a mess thinking back there because they were all like the same socket or very similar. It was like the LJ 1151 version 2 socket or something, which was in no way compatible with the socket before it, despite the fact that they like should have been. So anyway,
well, we also got Rocket Lake and Alder Lake in the same year. So the 11th gen Intel lineup was released in March of 2021, and then we got Alder Lake, the 12th gen, in November of the same year. Obviously, again, Rocket Lake was another nothing CPU line that
Should have
wasn't well
never been
received.
launched. Should have never, ever seen the light of day.
Yeah, so those two came in the same year as well. So Intel has definitely done it before. It wouldn't make sense if these were two like large architecture overhauls, but certainly the refresh and then future architecture makes sense. But again, I would expect that if they're doing a refresh, that it's really only for OEM systems, for people that, those big corporate
Yeah,
customers that need to have a new, the latest generation every single year. That's the only reason that that line is being announced. The real exciting stuff is the Nova Lake stuff.
Yep. So you get the Core Ultra 300 refresh, which is essentially a consumer trap. Definitely don't buy that. The good news is no one's buying the 200 series. I mean, I don't say that gleefully, but I mean in relation to potentially the 300 series that becomes a trap. If no one's really buying the 200 series, they're not going to, Intel's not in a dominant position where a lot of people are buying Intel CPUs. Hopefully, though, the Core Ultra 400 series, so Nova Lake that you've talked about, ends up being very, very good. That would be ideal. So, yeah, I mean, that's the 1954 socket. At least that's what it's rumored to be on. We're getting like larger on-die L3 cache, which should, challenge AMD for gaming. And then higher core counts and stuff like that, up to 16P cores and all that's rumored. So that's exciting. And I think you touched on the platform longevity as well. The sort of, I know we're a long way out here and it's hard to nail this down and none of it's official, but the rumors are suggesting that we're going to get 4 CPU generations on that socket. So, the future Razor Lake and Titan Lake stuff, which would be absolutely insane, awesome. Can't wait. Hopefully that's a thing. And really it has to be. If Intel comes out with the Core Ultra 400 series and doesn't talk about platform longevity or, future support in any capacity, it's going to have to be absolutely mind-blowing in terms of price to performance for anyone to bother with, because we've talked about it to death at this point, the whole platform longevity thing, but it is clearly a massive contributing factor to like consumer confidence in investing in the platform. Whether you use it or not, whether it's for you or not, it's clearly a thing, because we've got plenty of examples where AMD and Intel were pretty much neck and neck and offering similar price to performance, but AMD was selling much better. And it's an absolute bloodbath today. I was looking at the, Tech Epiphany on X or Twitter, whatever the hell you want to call it. He rounded up the week 50 CPU sales on Mind Factory, which aligns pretty closely with what we're seeing on Amazon US.
Yeah, I think he looks at Amazon as well.
Yeah, I haven't got his Amazon stuff, but I know it aligns very closely with that. And for week 50 CPU sales, AMD got 94% of the retail market, with 6% going to Intel. So Intel sold a combined 120 units to AMD's 2,000. And AMD,
I think on Amazon, it's been pretty much 85% AMD for the last little while, like long while on Amazon.
Yeah, pretty much years now at this point.
Yeah, so it's pretty high. I mean, I think the problem that Intel's facing is that, well, first of all, Intel is not in a completely dire position for overall client CPU sales. If you look at their revenue that they get from the client division, it's actually very high still. And that's largely due to laptops where they dominate, and also OEM systems. Like Intel is still quite a successful brand when it comes to everything outside the DIY market. Not as successful as they once were. Obviously, AMD's come back in servers and things like that, but they have a place in the market outside of what we look at, the DIY side of things. The problem is, and what I think we'll see over time, what has been happening over time, is what happens with the enthusiast community does filter through to other places eventually. So if you have multiple generations of AMD offering clearly the better option for DIY buyers, that starts to shift the market with word of mouth, with brand, all that sort of thing, and does start to affect IT purchases and things like that over time, especially as AMD builds out their support for that side of the business, because they do need to still make, competitively priced products, do the deals that get them into OEM systems, support them with all the pro stuff that's required. So over time, if they stuck with the current path of making processors that aren't necessarily as competitive, especially for gaming systems, don't have that upgradability. So, people just aren't buying it in the enthusiast community. It is going to hurt them long term. And so, yeah, they really do need to do this pivot and change, which appears to be what they are doing with the next generation, to make it so that, first of all, they get a bit more of a foothold in the DIY market, but that would also assist them to, retain, I guess, their brand presence for other types of systems where AMD has becoming more and more attractive over time. So, yeah, that's hopefully going to make things much more interesting and competitive, especially because we're expecting Zen 6 to be released at some point next year as well. So we should be getting two pretty significant and pretty interesting CPU generation launches that are going to shake up many, many things, not just from CPU performance, but also should you upgrade to this platform or that platform. All of that discussion, I think, will be very, very interesting in 2026.
Yes, and it is also a major architectural upgrade as well. So they use the sort of hybrid architecture from Alder Lake through to Arrow Lake. This is a full architectural reboot with Nova Lake. So should be a dramatic change in how things work, and don't expect a continuation of what we have been seeing. And again, hopefully they introduce this platform longevity and all of that. So fingers crossed Intel actually gets their act together and does something pretty amazing with Nova Lake, and then the following generations that'll be supported on that platform. That I'm extremely hopeful for that, because having it just one-sided not only makes our job incredibly boring, but it's just also not great for consumers as well. You want some, competition, obviously. And unfortunately, on the CPU front, we haven't had a whole lot of that over the last 10 years. There was like a brief moment where you could sort of recommend one or the other, and then it flipped on its head. So, yeah, not ideal for that.
I guess the positive news is that AMD hasn't been in the dominant position, like having the best gaming CPU for that long. So they haven't quite started to turn the screws on consumers to the full extent that they perhaps could if, for example, their X3D part was the best for multiple generations. You'd start to see more of those like 9850 X3Ds coming out, where they're really pushing up the price.
We're seeing the start of it now.
Seeing the start of it, trying to cash in while they can, but obviously over time that's bad. You want competition. I still think the CPU market on the whole, even though AMD dominates, CPUs I still see is quite reasonably priced. Like I don't think a 9800 X3D at nearly $500 US is crazy historically. Like if you look across what the best CPU has cost over many, many years, that's a fairly normal sort of price, even on the lower end compared to some of the generations where those parts were costing, nearly $1,000 US. And that was back, with different levels of inflation, that sort of thing. That would be well over $1,000 now.
Yeah.
So, and again, there's budget CPUs that are available and affordable. We're probably not in the same position where, there was $120 CPUs on the latest platform that were really good and worth purchasing. That price is a little higher than it was, but we're in a reasonable position. But that, of course, definitely would change if there was no competition or lackluster competition for many generations in a row. So hopefully that's something that won't happen.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, almost 10 years ago now, if you wanted more than, I think it was 6 cores, so just actually, no, let me rephrase that. If you wanted more than 4 cores with 8 threads, which was the 6700K, we just talked about that, so I don't know why I got confused with that. But yeah, the 6700K, which was refreshed to the 7700K. But if you wanted more than 4 cores on the desktop, you had to then go buy one of the LGA 2011 CPUs, and that was the version 3 LGA 2011 CPUs. So the high-end desktop stuff, Broadwell E, and that started with the 6800K or the 6850K. They were 6-core, 12-thread, and you're looking at like $400 to $600 US for those CPUs. If you wanted the 8-core model, the 6900K, that was $1,100 US. And that's 9 years ago now. And then if you wanted the 10-core 6950X, which I was lucky enough to have one of those because Intel sent me one, that was $1,723. So that's
like 2,500 Australian dollars, 2,500 US dollars now.
Today, in today's money. Yeah. So if you wanted a 10-core 20-thread CPU back then, yeah, you were looking at about you were looking at spending more money on that than you would be on an RTX 5090.
Yeah,
So
so that's crazy. Speaking of Nvidia stuff, do you want to talk about Nvidia cutting supply?
I
Or
did hear about that rumor. Yes. Let's.
yeah, so we're not sure how realistic or real this is, but there has been a rumor that's popped up in the last couple of days since we recorded the Q&A series, where Nvidia has said that they might, or rumors, board channel rumors are suggesting that Nvidia is about to cut 50 series supply by 30 to 40% for the first half of 2026, citing, of course, would you have guessed it, DRAM memory shortages. So yeah, not 100% sure whether this, like, I think there's many ways that you can read into this
This would be
because you could,
this would be VRAM memory shortages, but memory
yes,
shortages.
yes, this would be VRAM shortages. There's many ways you can read into this. The first issue is, of course, Nvidia was planning to produce products normally, and there's suddenly this surprise cut that's going to really shake up the market and make GPUs extremely expensive. I think that's the sort of doom side of this news that we've sort of seen. I've seen a few, popular tweets popping off on X about, oh, this is going to make GPU pricing crazy and all of that because they're just cutting supply and that's going to cause problems. The other angle that you can look at this is if there's less interest in GPUs in the first half of 2026, just maybe naturally because the GPU is going to be a year old at that point, but also if they do have to increase prices slightly because of VRAM shortages, then there's going to be less interest in those products. And so it would make sense to cut supply. There's no point producing products that people aren't buying, especially at higher prices than they were able to manufacture them previously. So how do you sort of see this news? Is this, first of all, do you think this is going to be a thing? And then secondly, like, what impact do you think it would have?
Wouldn't be shocked if it's going to be a thing, to be perfectly honest. And I checked the sources on this, so it comes from Board Channels and BenchLife, which both they're Asian sources, both have a good track record. So it's not like this is potentially fabricated from just a random person or someone who doesn't have a good track record. So it's coming from a pretty reliable source, I would say. And it's not shocking information to me. It makes sense that they would be doing this. And the result will be GPU prices will increase, which the writing's been on the wall for a while now, which is why in our top 5 best GPUs video that I put out, I'm like, well, if you want a GPU, if you've been thinking about one, I don't think there's going to be a better time to buy them right now. So get it. That was around the Black Friday time period. And yeah, all indications, whether it be from AMD or others, internal reports or whatever, were suggesting that GPU pricing would be increasing. And it's not just that, like, it's a supply and demand thing, right? They're not just jacking up the price of the VRAM and, it's like the producers, the source of the VRAM has increased. It's more increasing in price because the supply is decreasing. So if the supply decreases and Nvidia doesn't decrease their supply, well then presumably they would produce GPUs that they don't have memory to pair with. So those GPUs have to sit around waiting for the memory to arrive so that they could pair them and send them out, or however it gets packaged. But that would be the problem, right? That's the bottleneck, is you have GPUs to sell, no memory to make graphics card. So I think that would be the concern, and the reason why they'd be scaling back the production is because it's meeting the supply of the VRAM.
That's right. And, this is likely to impact, GPU prices, but I don't think it'll impact it too differently to if they had made the GPUs and were just trying to sell them anyway, because we're expecting the actual bill of materials, like the BOM cost of these products, to increase because of the memory supply, all that sort of thing that you were just talking about. So if they decided to, continue full steam ahead, the GPUs that they'd be selling would cost more. They would just have more of them, and there'd be this huge supply and demand it'd be all out of whack. The balance is all wrong. And again, they might have issues with the VRAM supply side of things. They might not actually be able to make the fully complete GPUs as well, which would cause further problems. So all over, GPU prices are going to go up regardless, I would have said, whether Nvidia does this or not. And I think this is more, if this does happen, I think it's more likely that this is just Nvidia adjusting their production to meet the demand that there would be based on the prices that they'd have to sell the graphics cards for. And Nvidia, yes, Nvidia makes a huge margin on these GPUs, probably in excess of 50% across the entire lineup. They could overproduce cards, have this big glut of supply, which would be great for consumers because the lack of demand, supply and demand economics working out. Too much supply, prices go down because of a lack of demand, and then the demand comes back up and buys those cards. That's what everyone wants to see. But realistically, Nvidia, in the dominant position that they're in, there's no incentive for them to do that. They are much more interested in margins than trying to pump up the GeForce overall revenue, I guess, especially because most of their revenue comes from AI at the moment. So they're not going to sacrifice margins. What they're going to sacrifice, and what this rumor is suggesting that they're going to sacrifice, is the supply and then also the pricing. They're just going to make the cards more expensive. I think it would be pretty crazy for AMD to do this. So cutting supply for their GPUs, unless they can't make the cards because of a lack of memory, that would of course make sense. But outside of that, I think it would be pretty crazy for AMD to cut supply based on, maybe they have to sell their cards for more or whatever. I think it would make much more sense for them to continue pumping out GPUs and just offer them at more attractive prices, or trying to get people interested in them, sacrificing margins a little bit, that sort of thing. But Nvidia, very different story, and this obviously makes sense for them.
Yes, and it is reported to affect the RTX 5070 Ti and 5060 Ti 16GB first. So you'll see those cards probably increase in price and be more difficult to purchase. So therefore, I would normally tell you to race out and buy 5070 Ti right now if you want one. And I guess I am saying that. But if you want a graphics card of that sort of performance, I would recommend the 9070 XT, because over in the US, you can still get them for around $620 to $630 US pretty comfortably. And that's quite a considerable saving for roughly the same level of performance with, similar upscaling quality and decent ray tracing and all that sort of stuff, which I think you would agree with, Tim.
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I was just having a look at Newegg right now. Yet, obviously the impacts that we're seeing, or the potential impacts from this rumor, are not happening yet. So as you've mentioned, 5070 Ti, you can get those for $750. The 5060 Ti 16GB, you can also get that for $430. I think there's one model in stock still available at that price, which is the MSRP for that card. But yes, I think the Radeon cards generally offer a bit better value. I think it's interesting that the rumors are suggesting those models in particular are the options that they're sort of scaling back. I guess it's because those are the two cheapest models with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. The 5070 does have 12 gigs, so yeah, interesting on that one. But I guess if they have to make 16 gig cards, they want to prioritize the 5080 and then the 5090 above that with 32 gigs. So yeah.
Yeah, well, the 5090 is already grossly overpriced, so you could imagine it wouldn't really affect, despite the fact that it uses more VRAM, it's not really going to affect that model because, it's already just ridiculously overpriced. You're looking at, I think I'm over at Newegg at the moment. Wow, they're over $3,000.
Yeah, and the 5080's gone up a little bit as well, as I've sort of had a look. They're currently the cheapest model on Newegg is the MSI Shadow, which is $1,100 US. They were $1,000 a couple of months ago, so pricing is starting to creep back up for the 5080. But it seems like most of the rest of the lineup is at normal-ish sort of prices. 5070, again, you can get those for $550, so that seems normal. Actually, the cheapest model is $520. So that's not too bad.
Yeah, every time I look at 5090 pricing, I convinced myself that the MSRP was $3,000 and have to go check that it was actually $2,000. I'm like, it was $2,000, right? I'm like, it can't be. They're all over $3,000. It had to be $3,000. But no, it was $2,000. So anyway, buy 9070 XT. This is pretty much the takeaway there.
Yes, yeah, buy GPU sooner rather than later, especially because it's interesting because there has been this talk of GPU pricing going up for a while now, but it seems like there is still enough supply of most of the models, maybe outside of 5080 and above, to keep pricing at the MSRP or below for now. But as soon as that starts to run out, then you're going to start to see pretty significant problems, I would have thought, especially because last time I was having a look at the DRAM exchange GDDR6 spot prices, it's gone up by about 100% compared to earlier in the year. So previously, the spot price for GDDR6 modules, I think, was somewhere in the $2.50 sort of range, which seems to be pretty normal. The current DRAM exchange session price is about $4.45. So that is quite substantially higher, and that will cause GPU prices to go up by, I would probably suggest, between $50 and $100 for a 16 gigabyte card at some point, once that starts to affect the production lines and all that sort of thing, at some point in 2026. So yeah, not ideal, but yeah, get a GPU while you can if you need to upgrade, and then sort of we'll go into this wasteland period of no one buying GPUs.
Yeah, despite everything being kind of, well, almost everything being bad and the 2026 outlook being bleak, at least the good news is there are some good quality GPUs that you can buy now and will last you years to come. So if you were to buy, as I'm recommending, a 9070 XT or a 9070 or even a 16 gigabyte 9060 XT, you buy one of those GPUs, you're going to be set for years to come. So good gaming performance. And again, I've got nothing against the 5070 Ti. It's just that I don't think for nearly $200 US it's worth it over the 9070 XT. But anyway, that's at least some sort of positive takeaways that you can actually buy that critical component now at or near the MSRP, which is what we've wanted for a while now.
Yeah, unlike DDR5 memory, where the price impact was sort of felt pretty much immediately in the market, GPU's bit longer chain there. But we'll see how that goes. We'll see what the actual impact of pricing is, and whether companies like AMD, for example, try to absorb some of that cost as opposed to just passing it straight on to consumers. Because it's always interesting if the VRAM cost becomes a significant issue, but AMD's already ordered a whole bunch of GPU dies because they put in the manufacturing order to TSMC, or Nvidia did this maybe a while ago. They're going to have a lot of oversupply of GPU dies that they then have to pair with memory to make a product that they're then going to have to try and sell to someone. But if there's no interest because the price, keeping all the margins the same, if the price then increases and the interest isn't there, then the only solution for them is to start impacting their margins by making the cards cheaper. So while they can adjust supply, adjust the manufacturing orders for these things to some degree, a lot of those things are locked in reasonably far in advance so that they can get, they have to go to TSMC like years in advance to allocate the wafers. And then obviously they have to decide what they use those wafers on in advance as well. So yeah, it'll be pretty interesting to see what happens there with all that sort of thing. Another weird product that I saw, and I see that you have seen as well because you put this in the notes, is the AMD RX 9060 XT low-powered version. So I don't know why they've made this, but they have, or at least they've appeared to have, which is a version of the 9060 XT 16 gigabyte, slightly reduced clocks and a reduced total board power. So that's a weird one.
It is definitely a weird one because it doesn't do anything radically different to the standard model. So the rumor is that it's going to be the total board power rating will be reduced by about 40 watts from 180 to 140. And this is for, I believe it's a 16 gigabyte exclusive model. So there will be no 8 gigabyte variant.
Just before you continue, we should clarify that this is not a rumored product. This is on AMD's website right now. It's listed as the AMD Radeon RX 9060 XT LP, and it says immersive experiences at low power. So it's an official product.
Yes.
That's on their website, not a rumor.
No, that's right. But the actual specifications around how much low power it actually uses, I don't know if that's been confirmed yet. I'm working under the assumption that it is yet to be confirmed.
They've said on their website it's up to 140 watts, but they don't list clock speeds or anything like that. So we know for a fact that it is the same number of compute units, so 32. So they're not cutting that down. They're not being sneaky on that front. We know that it has the 20 gigabits per second memory at 16 gigabytes of GDDR6, 128-bit memory bus. So that's, again, the same specs as the normal model. And the board power is listed at 140 watts. So I think,
so they've dropped the board power by at least 40 watts, which would be a 22% reduction in power usage. And we don't know the clock speeds, though, how they're achieving that. So the rumor I saw they were saying the boost clocks had been reduced by 80 megahertz, which is like a 3% reduction. So if they're able to only reduce the boost clocks by 3% to achieve a 22% drop in power, that means that the 9060 XT was by default was just outside of its efficiency window, but also in a big way. So
Yes.
I guess they did that to make it more competitive with the 5060 Ti, which is usually why they kind of break the efficiency of their own products to get the performance to where they need it to be, to where they think that it'll be an attractive product. But I don't know about any of that. That's just, the boost clocks, we've got to wait and see on that one to sort of work out roughly how much of a reduction in performance we would see to get that at least 22% drop in power usage. So it's an interesting product. It still would have all the same power connector requirements. So they've essentially just made an official, it's like an eco mode 9060 XT. So
yeah, it's like, why don't they, like, I guess first of all, when you say like eco mode, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, you could just configure a 9060 XT to be at 140 watts, except with, if you bought the full power version, you get the option to also run it at the full 180 watts or whatever if you want to. So that's quite weird.
You definitely could do that on an existing model. Whether the low power models are binned and don't clock quite as well, and that's why they've made this model, or it's because it's going to be a Chinese exclusive, I believe. You might want to try and confirm that information. I don't think this is I think it's a China exclusive. So maybe there's some sort of demand over there, like they're trying to get into internet cafes or something like that. I'm spitballing. I don't know. There's not enough information available yet. But yeah, I don't think it's a worldwide release, this one.
Yeah, it's possible it's an OEM customer as well that's requested this specific model, which they've had to then put on their website. So potentially an OEM customer's had a design of a desktop PC that they wanted to put a 9060 XT into, but maybe they were cheaping out on the power supply or some other component, or the form factor didn't allow them to use 180 watts or whatever. And so they've gone, hey, AMD, we want this card, but we want a 140 watt version. So can you make that? And they're like, I guess so. And so then they make this product. So
the names could be potentially a bit misleading as well, because 9060 XT LP, in my head, I would normally go for low profile.
Yeah.
So like it's a slim line card, not necessarily low powered. But anyway, that's just we'll see what happens there.
Yes. So not 100% sure what this is going to mean in terms of performance, availability. You know, is this going to be a different price if people buy like a system that has this in it? Is that the same price as a typical 9060 XT system? You would hope that it is slightly cheaper because it's lower powered, but I doubt it. So yeah, not sure about that, but we'll see whether this card gets any sort of significant wide launch. I would expect that it will not be available to purchase at like your local DIY retailer. They're just going to sell you the normal 9060 XT as it currently stands.
Or 9060.
Or the 9060. Has that been released for the DIY market yet?
No.
Or?
Well, you can buy it in pre-built systems here in Australia and other regions, but it's not meant to be a retail chip. So it's, or a retail product.
Intel Arc B770 keeps coming up over and over again as being this product that is, I guess, people are expecting.
The big battle mage.
So this comes from a reply to someone's tweet or
probably Intel using AI for they've replaced their social media manager with Intel AI, which is probably powered by something. It's Grok.
Honestly, that is the first thing that came to my mind when I read this response. So someone tweeted, with the B770, Panther Lake and Nova Lake on the horizon, there's lots to get hyped about in the future as well. Intel Gaming official account posted, 100%. We're thrilled to hear that you're pumped about the B770, Panther Lake and Nova Lake.
Such an AI response.
Yeah, exactly, right? The future of gaming and performance is looking seriously exciting. And then they've put the emoji of the smiling man with the sunglasses. So that seems to be like the AI going, oh, this person's excited about these three things. Let's copy and paste that back into the response, as opposed to an official Like
It's like
B770 is a thing, so it's coming soon.
you like stuff, places, and things. Me too.
That seems to be basically what has happened here.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I don't, at least based on what I'm hearing, Intel does not have major product announcements for the desktop side of things for CES. So if there was something like an Intel Arc B770, that would probably mean we'd get pre-briefed on it, or at least briefed on this product, because it would be this exciting sort of thing. At this stage, I haven't heard anything related to that. Now, of course, they could at the last minute do something like that, not sure. But as things stand, I think most of what you'll see from Intel at CES will be related to mobile stuff. And there will be some graphic stuff there related to the upcoming news APUs and processors that they've launched on the mobile side of things. But desktop, I'm not expecting too much. So yes, the B770, I don't think, I still am not convinced it's a product that will be released, but it keeps coming up. It keeps coming up as this product.
I know. With every passing month, it seems less and less likely. And now we have this memory shortage. So, like, how much VRAM was a B770 going to have? Clearly 16 gigabytes or more. And we're hearing
that's what you would think.
And we're hearing that 16 gigabyte cards are getting scaled back because of a memory shortage moving into 2026. So if they do make the Arc B770 and they're competing for, some memory, how much of it can they get? How many cards can they produce? What's the price going to be? And it's sort of like a generation behind the current generation in terms of performance. It's going to be a really big die, a costly die, still an inefficient architecture relative to what AMD and Nvidia have. I can't see. And while they have addressed, or they've proven that they can address the CPU overhead issue, the issue itself is still present. It still exists. It hasn't been completely solved for all games. They've just fixed it to a degree. So a lot of those existing problems and reasons for why I thought an even faster Arc GPU wouldn't be feasible are still present.
I remember recently I was looking into, and this was for the VRAM analysis video where I went through and sort of was trying to model what price increases you can expect if VRAM prices went up. And while I didn't really put too much emphasis on the Arc cards in that video, I did do some modeling to sort of figure out, BOM costs of Arc GPUs and all that sort of thing. And the only numbers that sort of made sense for Intel GPUs was Intel's margin being something like 5% or less on that product.
Yeah.
And that's with Nvidia having like over a 50% margin, AMD having about a 50% margin as well. And that's on the GPU die plus memory combination. So Intel having this very slim margin on the B580 doesn't give them tons of room if they have to scale up the die size into this new die. Doesn't give them a lot of room to sort of adjust pricing for what is a pretty competitive mid-range segment in the market. Like if they're pushing up to the performance of 9060 XTs or 9070s or 5070s with this sort of product, but the die size has to be significantly larger. That's pretty problematic for them, especially as you mentioned with the DRAM side of things at the moment. I think with the 50 series, the 5070 die is currently smaller than the die that is being used in the B580 as it stands. So the 5070's GB205 is 263 square millimeters. The B580 is 272 square millimeters. And obviously the performance of a 5070 is significantly better than a B580.
Yeah.
So yeah, and this is all things that we've brought up previously when talking about this large product. It may not be economically viable for them to make it, and that's still my current position of why I don't think they'll release it. But you never know. They might decide to sell it at a loss. As we've mentioned before, maybe they've already produced some of these GPU dies and they need to use it for something, so they'll make the card and just get rid of them. Not sure. But yeah, I don't think it'll be released is my current position. All right. I know Steve has some interesting topics to talk about, so making the next upcoming section, the boring life section, is perhaps not accurate, but we will take a break and get back and get into the boring life stuff. All right, and we're back. Steve, take it away. I hear, as I said just probably 5 seconds ago in the podcast, interesting stuff has been happening on your end that I've also heard about and want to hear more.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start with this one. So I took a little break about a week ago. I went away for a week. So just sort of a boys' trip, take a week off work, end of year type thing. So I did that. And basically, when I was preparing to go away, so getting all the content done for the channel, wrapping up all the things I needed to get done, and I was getting close to, I was basically finished work for the day, right? It might have been 9 o'clock at night. I'd wrapped up. I'm like, I'm done, worked all day. I'm going to relax for an hour or so, go to bed, wake up, drive to the airport, which is like a 2-hour thing, fly, go, have a relaxing time. Anyway, about 8 o'clock, so this is just as I'm getting close to wrapping up work, we start to smell in the house electrical burning smell, which is never good. And it was quite strong. So that's always concerning. We couldn't really pinpoint where it was coming from. And I, as I said at the start of this podcast, have on and off hay fever this time of year. So my nose is next to useless at the best of times through the last 3 months of the year. And my kids kind of suffer from it as well. So none of us had particularly good smelling senses, but it was quite strong. Anyway, there's an air conditioner in the room. And when we went up to the air conditioner, the smell coming out of that was very strong, but not reliable because it's recirculating, the air in the room. So if there's something burning near it, it's probably sucking that in and pushing the air out. So that was where we could smell it from. I thought, oh, don't tell me the air, because we're coming into summer, as you noted, 30 plus degree days. I think, don't tell me the air conditioner in the house is dying. So I said, well, we'll just keep an eye on it. We turned it off for a bit. Smell didn't seem to go away. And, when you hunt for these things, but you just can't work it out. So you sort of got to remain vigilant, keep an eye on things, try to, work it out, but you can't hunt it down. So anyway, I went and finished work. And about an hour later, my wife's gone past my daughter's PC and there is just smoke billowing out of the power supply.
Oh, no.
By this point, there is just caked white smoke just pumping out of the back of it. So she's run up, and the computer's still working, mind you. So, and the computer's not right next to my daughter. We've got it like on a shelf. So it's not clear to her. Like, she's looking at the screen. She can't see this smoke. So anyway, unplug the power cord. And, the sort of where the power cord plugs into the PC, that started to melt a bit as well. I don't really know what caused the failure. The computer's a couple of years old at this point, and we haven't had any problems. It pretty much stays on most of the time. She games on it a fair bit after school and whatnot. Anyway, computer dead, right? So I wasn't going to plug a power cord back into that power supply and try it. The white smoke was sort of an indication to me that I shouldn't do that. So I took the computer down, and the panic sets in that I'm about to leave for a week and my daughter's computer dies. I know it's sort of first world problems, but my daughters have a computer each, and basically my wife didn't want to have to deal with my daughter not having a computer for the week. So I thought, well, I got to try and fix this. Simple solution: replace the power supply. So I'm tearing the computer down at like 9:30 at night. Change the power supply over. And this is the PC we built on the Hardware Unboxed channel for Tessa. That video's on the channel somewhere from a few years back. I don't know how old now, but might be 2 or 3 years. Don't know. Anyway, change the power supply, push the power button. The computer turns on, then turns off. So has it damaged something else? I managed to get it into Windows once, and it had a few issues, shut it down, couldn't get the computer to turn on again. So tried a few different things, replaced a few different components. It seemed like maybe there was something damaged on the motherboard. So I took out her SSD, and I thought, you know what, I've got another similar spec test system. I'll just chuck the SSD in that. That'll get her up and running. She can game for the week. When I get back from my relaxing break, I'll deal with that mess then. Plug the SSD in the test system, boots up straight away. Windows does its quick reconfiguration. Happy days, all good, not a problem. So I set that up. I go to bed, jump on the plane, and fly away. Later that afternoon, my wife messaged me. She's like, oh, I've had a fun day today. She's like, so the computer that you put together for Tessa, for some reason, although I saw it working and we definitely had it working the night before, we fired it up today and it just does the blue screen of Deathloop. So I'm like, how about you just unplug the power cord, leave it sit for a few minutes, plug it in, try again. it still did it. They tried for like an hour or so, couldn't get it to work. So that was great. So that was just a complete waste of time. So my wife has a computer, so she thought, you know what, it's not the greatest computer in the world. It's actually the Ryzen Tower of Power that I built on the channel like 8 years ago. She still uses it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's still. I've actually got it sitting here. Actually, I'll quickly. Yeah, no, it's a podcast. So I don't know if people can see that very well or remember it, but I built that on the Hardware Unbox channel. I don't know, 8 years ago, quite a long time ago, and it hasn't missed a beat. It's a Ryzen 7 1700, and it's got the Fury Nano in it. Anywho, she thought, you know what, she can use that because that'll play some of the basic games she plays. And because her computer's up on a shelf, it's relatively close to the roof, but her current case fits, but this one's a bit too tall. And the cables, I think the main problem was the cables wouldn't reach because they go through the wall. So it's all neat and tidy and it's like custom made for her NZXT case. And whereas the cables in this case go in the top. So that was the problem. And because the cables go in the top, they wouldn't reach. So she had to lay the computer on its side. So this is kind of a weird story. But she put the computer up there, laid it on its side, plugged everything in, and booted into Windows, which worked, except now the computer was making a horrific noise because her old 120 millimeter AIO, the pump didn't like being laid on its side because I guess the air went into the pump and got trapped, and then it wasn't able to like prime and suck the water through.
Okay.
So then the computer decided to quickly overheat, and then she's like, that's really annoying. So she took her PC out and took it back to her desk, plugged it back in, and could not get the pump to work again. Like that was it. It killed it. So like the pump was pumping, but it just wouldn't circulate the water. So then her computer was wiped out, and she does a lot of stuff for us on the channel and that behind the scenes stuff like financing and whatnot, and couldn't do any of that work because her computer was down, so she couldn't do a lot of accounting for the week that I was away, which she was going to catch up on. So that was the next sort of comedy of errors, or I don't even know if you can call it that. It's just extremely unfortunate sequence of events. So now she doesn't have a computer. Tessa still can't game or whatever, which has now become sort of a low priority problem. But, it would be nice if she could game with her sister and do that. So she thought, okay, we have a home theater PC, which is quite a high-end gaming PC under the stairs. Maybe Tessa can just game on the TV rather than unplug all of that and remove it from the stairs because, again, that's all custom installed. So she sets up Tessa's accounts and everything, installs the game she wants to play on the PC and goes to playing. And this is insane. Absolutely insane. This is not a made-up story. So we have 2 cats, right?
Yes.
And they never cause any problems, our 2 cats. They're 2 little female cats. They're probably... I don't know how old they are now. How long ago did I get them, Tim? Probably like 5 years ago, right?
Don't know. Yeah, don't know.
Yeah, time flies. 5-6 years ago. Very well behaved cats. Except one of them, we have a lot of male cats visiting the house, and it's made one of the female cats extremely skittish. That's little Cookie. And she's been behaving a bit oddly. Anyway, she decides to go and pee on the desktop PC. It goes in the case and on the motherboard and kills the system.
Which is great. Yeah, that's crazy.
This sequence of events all happens like on the same day, the same night. So Tessa's set up, my wife's gone for like the 3rd option, got it all set up, and the cat pees on the home theater PC and kills it. And I still haven't actually dealt with that mess yet. That's another thing I've got to try and fix soon. I stopped at PC Case Gear on my way home and bought a heap of different things so I could fix the various different computers that had died. So then Tessa actually ended up sitting right where I am and used my gaming PC, my streaming setup for the week that I was away. So she ended up sitting in the studio and using that. And they got all their stuff installed on here. They didn't let Cookie in here, so Cookie didn't pee on my streaming PC, and it didn't die. So after all of that, so she went through like 3 computers or something. It was the first day that I left. So yeah,
wow,
that was a fun time for her. So just had power supply basically catch on fire, cat pee on system, AIO die because it was put on its side and it's very old. So it's a old Cooler Master 120 mil. It was working fine, but it did not like being laid on its side. It that killed it. So yeah.
Well,
So that
not a great
was
turn of events there, is it?
no. So it was. I kind of joked. I'm like, oh, I leave for essentially what is one day, and everything goes to crap. That's how much you need me. So I played into that a bit, which I don't think was appreciated that much. But you know me, can't resist an opportunity.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, I also did say it's a good thing we have like dozens of computers and you were able to get one of them to work, which again, probably not super helpful at the time, but I found it humorous while I had my feet up relaxing. And then one last little story, Tim. I did another thing outside.
Nice.
So, and my wife at the time of recording this doesn't know yet, but she'll be finding out later today when she gets home because the girls have actually gone on a little girls trip, so they get back today. And because some people know, we've got quite a large property, big garden. We do a lot of gardening and stuff. But what we don't have are any water features. Do you have a water feature, Tim?
Well,
your pool doesn't count, or your spa.
Okay, so no.
They're water facilities.
So no like ponds or anything, which I probably should get because birds like fly around and fly into the pool and stuff, which isn't great. But
I'm quite surprised your house doesn't have one because honestly, your house has everything. So that is, you got to up your game there.
Yeah, maybe.
So
look, honestly, I was thinking about it. We've got
well, I know how to make them now, Tim.
Well, we've got like a little fire pit that's like off from outdoor seating area, and my partner Miranda has flagged turning that into a pond because we don't really use the fire pit all that often.
It looks good though. You could have a pond there as well.
We could have a pond there as well. It would probably require cutting down a tree or two to put the pond in there somewhere. Or maybe doing some sort of interesting thing around that area. So we have thought about it, but yeah, it would be nice to have something where birds could at least like drink from because they can't drink pool water. Obviously, that's bad for them. So they end up just going for like our dog's water bowl a lot. So that gets a bit dirty because birds, they don't just like stick their little mouth into the water. They like get their whole body in there and they just swim around and stuff. So
yeah, that's why they call them bird baths. You can get those and stick them around the garden and you just top them up with water now and then. So my wife's been doing that for years. That's the little birds and stuff like that. But she sort of wanted like a water fountain, water feature for a while. Haven't really got into it. So she bought like a plastic one that's meant to look a bit rustic as sort of like it was a solar powered one as a trial earlier in the year. And she absolutely loves it. It looks okay. But yeah, it's like a plastic thing. Probably looks better than what I'm making it sound. But anyway, I thought for Christmas I'd do a bit of investigation. So I've custom made her a fountain out of like 2 terracotta pots. Actually, what I'll do is rather than just try and describe it, I'll probably just send you like a little video or some photos that you can stick in the YouTube version so people can actually see my little fountain. I couldn't go like a big fountain. I couldn't have like a big base because it's in a pre-existing garden with like plants all around it, which we don't want to dig up or destroy. So I had sort of like a dinner plate type base size area where I could fit this in. So it's actually on like a little steel stand. So anyway, I made a fountain, Tim, and it works really well. And it's a smart fountain. Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, I got one of my Shelly Plus switches, and what I did was, because we have a few different things that we wanted to turn on like randomly, remotely, whether it be Christmas lights or other things. And I know a lot of the Wi-Fi controllable things, you can do that already. But I got those Shelly PM devices, and I got a short like 1 meter power cord and then a waterproof like junction box, and installed and then configured them to my various Wi-Fis, because you can have like a primary and a secondary Wi-Fi, so I can connect them to either different, like my Starlink or my NBN, or different mesh Wi-Fis around the property, and it will auto connect to one of those. So if we just need to put something somewhere and we want to be able to control it from our phones, we just use that power cord, and the fountain connects in under the deck, which is actually a waterproof area anyway. But I've just plugged that in, and I used that little custom-made Shelly power cord that I made, and I called it Fountain. So now I've just added it to the Shelly smart home stuff, and you can turn the fountain on or off from my phone or her phone. So that's kind of neat.
Okay, not bad.
So yeah, smart fountain. Well, it's more of a water feature than it is a fountain, I think. That would be an accurate way of describing it. Once people have seen the photos or video or whatever, they can chime in on whether it's more of a feature or a fountain, and if there's a notable difference between the two. But that's really it for me, Tim.
Nice.
I guess if anyone's wondering, with the terracotta pot, I bought like some waterproofing paint, like membrane stuff to waterproof the main. Well, I did both of them, but I really only had to do the one larger bottom one, just so it doesn't absorb all the water over time.
Yep.
And yeah, that's it. It's a 24-volt pump. I don't know what else to tell. If you got questions, put them in the comments, and I'll do my best to address the water feature related questions, or any other questions. I can probably do other ones as well. So
yeah, no, that sounds like a pretty nice little project that you've got going there.
Yeah.
Out this way, not too much is happening. I can actually start to feel it getting noticeably warmer in here since I started recording the podcast.
I see you starting to sweat a bit.
So it's I had a look at my weather station. It's up to 38 degrees outside now, Celsius. So pretty warm. For people in the US, I believe that is 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So quite toasty outside. Out this way, though, haven't been doing any outside projects at the moment or anything super exciting. I have, well, actually, now that I say that, I actually have been doing a few things. Obviously, because it's growing season at the moment, I have gotten my orchard of little fruit trees up and running for this year. So this year I decided I actually would bother to net my cherry tree, which is quite hard because it's probably about 5 meters tall. It's, cherry trees, cherry pickers are a thing, right? So they grow quite tall, quite a unusual and awkward shape to net because of its long height, but it's not particularly wide. So done that successfully. Starting to get some nice little red cherries in there. Not quite ready for eating just yet. I did a few samples yesterday, but not quite ready yet. But I think probably by about Christmas Day, they could be ready, which would be nice. Be able to give some people some fresh cherries from my cherry tree on that day. My apricot tree has been growing super well this year and continues to get larger and larger as a tree, and has gotten large enough that the nets that I had to prevent birds from getting it was too small for the tree. So I decided I'd go online and I'd order an appropriately sized net. So I did some maths of like the height of the tree, the span of the canopy, figure out the sort of size of net that I wanted to buy. And I needed something that was about 10 by 10 meters so that it could wrap around the whole width of the tree and have enough, spare space to sort of anchor it to the ground and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was looking at net sizes, once you get over the standard sizes and get into the larger things like I would need, it wasn't that much more expensive to buy nets that were even larger than that.
No.
So what I did was I bought a 20 by 20 meter net.
Wow.
Because it was cheaper. Like I think it was maybe like $50 or $60 more to get the 20 by 20 meter one. But because it's 20 by 20 meters, if you want to cut the net to sizes, you actually get 4 10 by 10 meter nets. If I wanted to, make it and use it for other trees.
You bought a 4K one and you wanted 1080p.
Yeah, basically. So I bought this net and it arrived in a relatively compact but heavy package. I'm like, okay, nice. I've sort of 20 by 20 meters isn't going to be that big. Like it's obviously much bigger than the 10 meter one. I got this thing out and I started unraveling it. I was like, wow, this thing could, like my orchard itself is probably only 20 meters long. Like the space that I've got for growing that stuff is only about 20 meters in length. And so I'm like unraveling just like this tube of netting, and it's going like the whole length of this part of my garden. I'm like, okay, I've obviously bought one that's too big, but because it's so big, it's really easy to put over the tree and stuff. There's like no issue with trying to stretch it too far to the size. I've sort of used part of the net to just make like a barrier around the edges as well. So it's sort of like the net is nicely over the tree, but there's this additional net barrier. And if I wanted to, I could just extend the net over other trees as their fruits start to get into sort of the ripeness that requires netting. So despite the fact that this net is clearly too big, I guess in a sense it has worked out well. If I needed to, it would be very easy for me to go and net additional nearby trees without having to go crazy. And
it's funny you mentioned that, because listening to you, I half expect next time I come to your house, there'll just be like a little opening at the front of your driveway that I drive through and then have to zip back up, up on a tree.
Yeah. I mean, it's the netting stuff is a little frustrating, especially in Victoria, because there's laws around the net size to the diameter of the opening to prevent birds from getting caught and getting injured and stuff. But what that means is that the legal net size is not large enough to allow insects to pass through, or at least the size of bees and stuff that we have in Australia.
Right.
So if you were allowed to use a larger net size, yes, you'd be potentially damaging birds, but you'd also be able to leave the net on the tree for a lot longer, because that would allow bees to pass through and pollinate the tree. So essentially what you have to do is every season take the net on and off the tree, because otherwise the bees will not pollinate your tree and will not give you fruit. So that's a little annoying. But outside, so I couldn't really make a system where, because ideally I would build like a thing that goes over the orchard, like a large sort of structure, net that, and I could just leave that on all of the time. The tree would have space to grow and it would be nice. But you can't really do that unless you can make a system to get rid of the net during the pollination period. So it kind of defeats the purpose of making it, which is a little annoying. But netting the tree, especially with this net of the right size, is perfectly doable. So there's that. So yeah, going well in that sense out this way with the old fruit trees and stuff. As well, the Ashes are on at the moment, the cricket battle between Australia and England. Australia is currently 2-up in the series, the 5-match series. So the third match currently happening right now in Adelaide. As we speak on this podcast, it is happening. Could either decide the series in Australia's favour if they win 3-0 and therefore the series is won, or if England win, will continue, and I guess an unlikely potential series victory for them. But yes, right now, Ashes are happening. It's a very hot, very flat deck over in Adelaide at the moment. So I think over there it's forecast for 40 degrees. Australia's bowling, so not the ideal conditions to be bowling in that weather. But it'll be very interesting. It's been a very interesting series so far, with Australia in some respects dominating the first 2 matches unexpectedly. I think some people going into this series expected it to be a bit more even between Australia and England, but England kind of pooed their pants a little bit, especially in the second test. So yeah, it's been a good watch. Been some good for Australia at least. So anyway, the Ashes will keep updating people on that for the 3 or 4 people who are at all interested in the cricket. So I guess I'll probably do it for this week's podcast. Thanks to everyone for listening to this week's episode. Thanks to everyone for the feedback on the interview with Ed from Sapphire last week as well. Lots of really positive feedback and enjoying his takes on things. And his sort of positive vibe about the industry was quite nice. So yeah, appreciate everyone leaving some nice feedback on that one. As always, we have the Patreon supporter feed for people who are Patreon members. You get access to the ad-free version of the podcast and plenty of other additional things. The Discord chat, where we've got our podcast channel, and all sorts of other things that you can check out on Patreon, patreon.com/hardwareunboxed. Outside of that, thanks for listening. And we will not have a podcast for the next couple of weeks with Christmas coming up. We're going over to CES and we'll be doing some stuff there. But you can expect the next podcast probably in mid-January, I would say, at this point. So a couple of weeks off should be nice. We'll take a little break and we'll be back in January of 2026. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.